I know the dream we have. I know the dream we have for Africa, an empowered Africa, a resilient Africa, an Africa free of poverty. But you know what? Those of us who understand, those of us who feel strongly about that dream must not tire. We must persist. The burden is on those of us who know, and those of us who know must be the ones who take action. Those are the words of Professor Wangari Maathai, the 2004 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, which perfectly reflects the importance of this thematic we're discussing today and why we're here today. Good morning to you all. Welcome, bienvenue, karibu to this session titled The Filmmaker Meets the Forest Maker. Today, we will take a deep dive in Fmnr and its unique role in restoring, healing, and most importantly, bringing back hope to our African landscapes. My name is Salima Mahamoudou. I work with the World Resources Institute, and I will be your moderator today. This session is hosted by GIZ through the Forest for Future projects and World Vision, whom are both long-term partners and supporter of the land restoration movements across Africa and through the initiative AFL 100. Throughout this session today, we will have the opportunity to discuss with three distinguished panelists. First, with Tony Ronaldo, formerly known as World Vision Natural Resources Management Specialist. But for many of us, Tony is the Fmnr guru, the forest maker. Tony is for many people, and I must say myself included, an environmental hero. After making an impact on food security, environmental sustainability, and resilience for millions, thousands of vulnerable communities across the world, and most importantly, in Niger, my home country. We will also have the chance to hear from the second forest maker, the next generation of Tony Ronaldo, Irene Ojoku, who's an environmentalist with over 10 years of experience working with rural communities in Kenya. Irene has recently started her doctorate research on land degradation and Fmnr in Kenya at the University of Bonn Center for Development Research. But she's also a global evergreening ambassador and a 2016 global Fmnr champion to the Fmnr Hope. Last but not least, we'll have the honor to hear and discuss with the filmmaker, Volker Schrundorff, a prominent German filmmaker who has won an Oscar and a Palme d'Or. Volker has produced an educational film on Fmnr, and he is the mastermind behind the famous documentary, The Forest Maker, focusing on Fmnr, but also on Tony Ronaldo, while highlighting the revival and the importance of the underground forest. But before we start, we have the honor today of having Mrs. Kerfel Ruler, the Deputy Head of Division for Sustainable Agriculture Value Chain, International Agriculture Policies and Innovation at BMZ, who will help us set the scene and grant us the welcoming remarks. Mrs. Kerfel, thank you so much for being with us. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Salima. So on behalf of the Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, I'd like to welcome everybody who's listening to this very important and thrilling topic. I'm very glad to present together with the very important partners today. And what is our issue behind it? So today, the Global Landscape Forum Climate provides an important opportunity to focus on possible action and positive tipping points that can help us achieve the urgent systematic transformation necessary to sustain life on Earth. And forest and tree-rich productive landscapes are a central element of our fight against climate change and poverty, in particular in Africa. The African Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative, FAR 100, we already had an event on that on Tuesday, is a multi-stakeholder initiative, and it was established in 2015. And this aims to restore 100 million hectares of forest and tree-rich productive landscapes by 2030. And so far, 32 countries have joined and committed to restoring forest landscape, covering more than 128 million hectares as of October 21, so up to date. At UNFCCC COP26 in Glasgow, AFR 100 on Tuesday launched the second phase with a stronger focus on implementation. And today we will hear about one successful technique that has been widely applied in Africa and is bringing trees back to life in degraded areas. And so this farmer management natural regeneration, short Fmnr, is a low cost and effective form of tree cover rehabilitation. And by the simple act of pruning, Fmnr can release the untapped energy of deep underground root systems and rapidly turning shrubs and stumps into major trees and forests. With that way, entire forest landscape can be restored and contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation and improving food security and the well-being of affected communities. This is very important to us as BMZ to as well fight against hunger and achieve the whole SDGs. And I'm very glad that Fmnr was pioneered by Tony Rinaldo, and he made the first steps. World Vision's Australia's principal climate action advisor during the 1983 famine in Niger. Since then, he has worked with farmers in more than 26 countries to regenerate degraded areas. And in Niger alone, 5 million hectares of forest could be regenerated through Fmnr. Through support from BMZ, Fmnr is scaled up in Ethiopia and Kenya, reaching farmers and local communities in rural areas. Important is communication and awareness rising about this technique. It's an important element for successful scaling. Therefore, BMZ has worked together with the World Vision and German film director, with you, producer and screenwriter Volker Schlöndorff, to produce a brilliant educational movie on Fmnr that has been released already in June 21. To further disseminate knowledge about Fmnr and tell the amazing story of the forest maker, Volker has now produced a documentary about the vision and the work of Tony Rinaldo, who was also awarded the Right Livelihoods Award in 2018. Not to forget to mention. Before we will watch the nice trailer of this documentary, I would like to thank CIFOR as the secretary of the GLF and World Vision and GIZ as hosts of this session. Many thanks to our speakers, Tony Rinaldo, Volker Schlöndorff, and Irene Ojoku, and to the moderator Salima Mahmoudou for being here. I'm looking forward to an exciting plenary with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Kerfel, for these welcoming remarks. And you've really raised the importance of that we're at tipping points right now for Africa and for this movement. But most importantly, the need and the unique role that communication and awareness rising plays into really unlocking the true potential of land restoration across Africa and the world. So thank you so much. And we are quite pleased to have BMZ support us throughout this process. Thank you again to you. Without further ado, as you've mentioned, Mrs. Kerfel, we have the honor of having the filmmaker here with us today. Thanks to Volker, we were able to see Tony's visions and dream and experiences on the ground. So without further ado, I'll hand it back to you, Volker. Tell us about this movie and what it really inspired you to go down this path with Tony.
Yeah, hello, first of all, to everybody. So much has been said, I'd almost insist to show the trailer immediately, because this is just words, 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 and images say more than words. I met Tony almost by chance when he came back from Stockholm, where he received the so-called Alternative Nobel Award, the Right Livelihood Award. And he did a short conference about his work in the back room of an Italian restaurant. And I was simply so fascinated. I went to see him and to talk to him and ask, you must certainly have thousands of disciples roaming the world to spread the message and to implement the method. He said, well, actually, it is the farmers themselves, champion farmers, who spread the message from village to village, and in certain countries of the Sahel zone, even across borders. And so I said, but this has to go globally. Maybe if we can make a movie about it, we'll reach not only to a wider audience in the West to give a different image of Africa, but also to help within Africa to implement it. So you will see, I was right in one thing at least, that I found a protagonist with such an enchanting and charismatic personality that I didn't have to worry. I found my star. Look at him. Can we launch the trailer?
Well, unfortunately, we were not able to hear the powerful narrative that was supporting the images. But I think what we can maybe do is maybe hear from Tony and Irene, and maybe start attempt again to re-listen to this trailer a few minutes down into the sessions, while we wait for our IT supports to help us figure out with the sounds. Thank you again for your patience, and I hope these images was inspiring. And thank you again to you, Volker, for presenting this trailer. We'll get and have the chance to speak more with you in a minute and have some more insights into these processes. Well, without further ado, I'd like to maybe open the discussions with you, Tony, with some few questions around the forest makers. You and Irene are behind the scenes supporting these communities and really creating the transformation change that we need for Africa. But Tony, Fmnr is today recognized as one of the most promising intervention to heal our African landscape. As Mrs. Kerfeld just said, Fmnr is one of the pillars in many global strategies for development and land restoration. But how did you really discover this practice? What are some of the hiccups that you encountered at the beginning? And what are some of the ongoing hopes and challenges that are pertaining regarding Fmnr today?
Thanks, Salima, and hello, everybody. Pleasure to be here. So, as you know, I lived in your country, Niger Republic, and for the first 2.5 years, I struggled. I was trying to get people to plant trees, but most of those trees died. People weren't interested, and it seemed to me as a young man eager to have an impact that it was a big waste of time and money. And I pretty easily could have given up in those early years. But one day I was driving a vehicle load of tree seedlings to the villages, knowing full well that most of them would die. And when I stopped, a small bush caught my attention. And I took the trouble to walk over and take a closer look. And in that instant, everything changed because I recognized the leaf. It wasn't a bush, it wasn't a weed, it was a tree. And I knew there were millions of these trees dotted across that landscape. And that changed everything. And it's nearly 40 years on. I haven't lost the vision. I haven't lost the passion and the excitement of realizing nature will respond if you allow it. And so some of the obstacles in those early days, you're challenging deeply and long-held beliefs about trees, about land, about what it means to be a farmer. And all of us, not just farmers, but all of us find change very, very difficult. And so that can be slow and hard going. And a lot of people are surprised when I tell them, actually, 95% of my time isn't spent on technical issues of trees and land degradation. It's spent on changing mindscapes. And if I win that battle, the rest is relatively easy because everything you need, nature is willing and ready to provide it. And so if you win mindset change, that will lead to behavior change. And if you win that one, people will remove the constraints that stop nature from doing what it can do. The second big one back then was policies. Those who depend on trees for their livelihoods, and I would say for their very life, don't own them, don't have user rights to them. And so this is a big disincentive for them to sustainably manage those trees for the present and future generations. So those were the two biggies. And ongoing, this is an interesting one. When you speak about land restoration, the predominant paradigm is tree planting. But in our experience, particularly in these more semi-arid regions, is it costs 10 to 200 times more to plant a tree than to regenerate one. And you get a very, very low success rate compared to almost 100% with regeneration. So there's this bias. And my prediction is, with all the millions of dollars being pledged for restoration, my prediction is most of that will go to tree planting without a thought. It would be automatic. And there's this perception, Fmnr is low cost, it's farmer managed, it's natural regeneration, therefore it must be cheap, it must be non-scientific, and it must be inferior or no value. So those are the struggles that we're up against today, but fortunately the tide is turning.
Thank you. And I must say the passion is still here. We can hear it, we can sense it in your voice. And you've said something that really struck me, is that you didn't spend most of your time on the technicality. It was really on the behavior change, on the mindset change. That really does resonate with the efforts that we're seeing in the world. But who are these stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders we need to change the mindsets to? Who should we target to really trigger these changes that you've seen in Niger and that needs to happen not only across Africa, but as we're hearing from COP these past days across the world? So who are these stakeholders and what does it really mean to scale up the successes that we've seen in Niger?
If we get this one right, we can save ourselves a lot of money and a lot of time and be much more effective. There are many stakeholders: land users, policymakers, local government, merchants, non-government organizations, you can go on. But the main stakeholder has to be the land user, the farmers, the pastoralists, the forest dwellers. And why is that? They don't have the luxury of a secure and regular salary. Their success, their very survival is dependent on getting this land management piece right. If they get it wrong, they'll be hungry. If they get it right, they'll have well-being, security. And so giving them knowledge, enabling them, empowering them is critical. And they're the most highly motivated to get it right. You won't have to incentivize them. You won't have to order them around. They'll do it because it's in their own self-interest. So every time, if you ask me that question, it's the land users.
Thank you so much, Tony. And you've said it right. You don't need to.
Sorry, and the measure of success, it's twofold. Land users are not doing Fmnr because I told them to, but because they understand and they want to. And secondly, Fmnr is spreading from farmer to farmer beyond project boundaries without my knowledge. That's how I measure success.
That's an amazing way. It's the legacy. It's not really within the boundaries of what the efforts. It's really the legacy that it had and the uncontrolled spreads that it triggered around Africa and Niger. Thank you so much for that, Tony. I will maybe turn it to you, Irene, as another force maker from Kenya on the other spectrum of Africa. Could you maybe tell us about your experience around Fmnr, what it meant in the context of Kenya, and what are some of the similarities or differences that you were able to encounter in the Kenya context?
Okay, thank you very much, Salima, and it's a pleasure to join this very important discussion. So, one, I want to say that when approaches are presented to communities, they are presented in ways that have expectations for communities to adopt them. And those who present these approaches come with the understanding that they are coming to solve the challenges of communities. Now, it's very important that people understand that communities have lived in this context. They understand this context. They know the challenges they face, and they have input in what can resolve these challenges. So my experience with Fmnr, when it was introduced in Kenya, the question I started with is, what is this? I am an environmentalist. My background is in environmental studies, resource conservation. And in my university, I was never taught about natural regeneration as an approach to restoring degraded landscapes. All over my studies, it was about tree planting and tree planting. So when I got to interact with this approach, the question is, can it really work? What is this? Now, it takes patience, it takes time, it takes willingness, and it takes the risk to take a step to implement it or to apply it for you to believe in it. So the first question is the what. When you introduce this concept, you must unpack the what. And this what must be well understood by the people. Then the next bit is the why. What motivates me to take a step to move into this direction? Farmers have so many things they are involved in. Farmers are battling with many challenges to bring food to the table, to ensure that their land is productive. What would motivate them to take up Fmnr against any other land restoration approach or any other sustainable land management approach? So the motivation becomes the incentive for action. The motivation becomes the first initiative that allows farmers to join this action. The motivation allows the practitioners who we work with very closely in terms of propagating this approach. And government officers are really fundamental when you're introducing these approaches, because they have what it takes to transform a community if it means scaling up approaches that work. The government's arm is big. That's how we say it in my country. If the government wants something done, they can actually do it. If they do not have the will, then we'll have challenges even with partners who bring in objectives. So what is the motivation? How is Fmnr going to address the AFR 100 targets in Kenya? How is Fmnr addressing the livelihood challenges for communities in our context? How is Fmnr bringing wood, firewood that women need when they want to cook? So when you have unpacked the why, then we move to the who. So who are we looking at? There are people who are more interested in restoration, others are not, based on what they are focused on. So Fmnr is a people-centered approach. It allows the farmer to take the management role, and he becomes the decision maker on whether to restore or not to restore. Fmnr enhances inclusivity. So children can actually participate in Fmnr, women can participate, even people with disabilities. We have seen them participate in restoring degraded landscapes. They only need to identify the indigenous trees that are struggling to find an opportunity to thrive. They just do the pruning, they allow them to grow. The bushes are transformed into more productive landscapes. So people become the agents for change. It is the people who make the difference. It is the people who are at the front line of the challenges they face. So then where do we implement Fmnr? The agroecological conditions play a very important role in defining where Fmnr works or where it doesn't work. So it's very important that people understand the context where you are introducing Fmnr so that you allow it to actually thrive, to enable communities to scale it up. what is the land tenure system? Will it work for scaling restoration or it will not work? We must work on the constraints that would actually bar Fmnr uptake. So this is how we look at it. How does the model sites approach work perfectly to scale out? Because people believe in what they see, not just what they hear. And we show that Fmnr works, and that really worked for Kenya, where we have model sites. The model sites become the centers for learning, and people learn from this. Lastly, how does Fmnr apply in my context? The adaptability. How do we ensure that the approach is adaptable within the context within which is introduced? The governance, the policy environment. These are some of the challenges that bar communities from taking up. But when they are tackled within the introduction, the implementation of Fmnr works so well. So these are some of the scenarios within which we have introduced Fmnr in Kenya, and to date, it is one of the leading approaches that many people are looking into and are really interested in scaling out.
Thank you. From what you're saying, Irene, and what Tony just said, what I'm hearing is something that is low cost, something that is easily adaptable across landscapes and people, but something that is people-centered. I haven't heard you say a project has initiative or something. This is people taking acknowledging the value of the trees and really protecting it and growing it and spreading it. So I would like to maybe take one more attempt to looking at the trailer, because I think what you've just said really captures what this trailer is about. So could we maybe try one more time to hopefully hear from this trailer and not only see this time? Could we try to push for this trailer, Aman? Would it be possible to, so this is the trailer, the Forest Maker trailer. And as a reminder, there will be a special announcement that Volker will make about this particular documentary. So stay tuned and make sure you drop your questions. Tell us what you're thinking about what we've seen and heard thus far. And most importantly, feel free to target your question to either Volker, Tony, Irene, and even Lisa, who will be here and supporting us in answering those questions. So could we try to look at this and enjoy the trailer? It looks like there's a special saying in my country that says if you're waiting for something, it means that it's getting ready and even more special. So I think we'll wait for it to see?
Still no sound.
Yes, unfortunately.
But it looks nice.
Indeed.
Without sound. I don't know if I suggest as a filmmaker, there's always problem in the technical details. People can watch the movie and we should use the time to hear from Tony direct.
It works now.
Imagine, trees could be growing on degraded land. Imagine, desertification could be stopped. Hundreds of millions would not have to leave their homes. Imagine, all that is needed is still there, right beneath our feet. Imagine, a whole underground forest is waiting to emerge again. Desertification is advancing at an alarming pace. People have given up. They feel like helpless victims of climate change and poverty, whose only option seems to be migration. But there is hope. Australian agronomist and alternative Nobel Prize winner Tony Rinaldo discovered a simple technique, making global regreening possible. What looks like small shrubs and bushes are actually trees, waiting for the opportunity to grow, feeding on the enormous root system that is still intact. The pruning consists in reducing the number of stems so that they can grow straight and tall.
It's embarrassingly simple. You know, people are expecting some big scientific explanation and complex machinery and all this kind of thing. It's embarrassingly simple, but I'm not ashamed because it works.
The farmers manage the pruning themselves.
Every 2 months, we do the pruning.
Word is spreading fast from Senegal to Somalia. In Niger alone, 6 million hectares of forest have already been restored.
You can visibly see the difference.
7% of the Earth's surface could become green again. 2 to 3 billion hectares of land, producing wood and food for hundreds of millions. And more importantly, giving people back their dignity.
But what I really see when I go back into the villages is the restoration of hope. And when you have hope, you can do anything. You believe in yourself, you believe in the future. The restoration of hope is the real gift.
Imagine we could spread this message around the globe and achieve restoration on an unprecedented scale.
I firmly believe that with the right production methods, Africa could easily feed the world.
Over.
Wow, wow, wow. It is the restoration of hope. You can sense the feeling, and it's the restoration of smile. And I liked one particular sentence you said, it's simple and it works. It really sums up the beauty of this technique, but also the impacts that it has on people. And Volker, thank you. I must say thank you to you. We've always heard of Fmnr, and for those who don't have the chance to be on the ground and work with communities that directly practice Fmnr, thanks to you now we know what it feels, and we sense the impact that it had on people. Could you maybe tell us, what was your intentions when you started this process? And maybe share with us one surprising fact that you've discovered or gone through when you were going through this journey with Tony and the Fmnr method.
Well, I guess curiosity killed the cat, and that's what got me into this project. It was just after having met Tony and heard about it, I thought, I mean, either this can't work and it is just some kind of a visionary with a dream, a preacher lost in the desert, or indeed it works, and then it's even worse that it has not yet been applied on a bigger scale. So that kind of, it was a mix of curiosity and rage, and I'm a very impatient and incredulous person, as Tony knows well now. After 3 years we've been practicing being together. And but quickly, my interest, I'm not an agronomist, of course, moved from the trees to the people. And what struck me was the way Tony Rinaldo engages the local populations as if he was one of them. So it is not the white man, either young in the 80s or old now. He is just like one of them. He is a farmer, and he can address and make them aware of their own behavior, which starts with they do not estimate their own labor anymore. Working in the fields is in Africa considered as the lowest of occupation a human being can do. I mean, it is almost like being a slave. If you go out with a hoe or walk behind the oxen, and one said to me, you know, even in Africa, you cannot expect a young man to walk behind an oxen for his lifetime. So to re-evaluate the farming as a profession and even as a business, to go beyond just produce to feed your family, and who then will, as soon as they are grown up, leave for the city, but to turn agriculture into a valid and considered profession, even as a job that can, beyond feeding the family, produce money, as it is in the rest of the world. And that was, you know, it reminded me so much of German farmers. I'm coming from Hesse, a poor country in the center of Germany, where 100,000 left for the United States if they were not, or for the New World, as it was called then, if they were not sold as soldiers by their monarchs to fight in the armies. And that is the state Africa is in. And if we managed, you know, to turn this around, and agriculture in Europe today is a very well considered, maybe even the most important trade and profession. Why not in Africa, where, as Tony says, is so much land, it could feed the world?
Thank you. Thank you, Volker. And I completely agree with you. It's really, it comes from the gut. And the aim is really, if it works there, it definitely works in Kenya, then it can work anywhere else. And we've seen it work across the globe, Fmnr being implemented. So a big thank you to you, Volker. We're receiving a lot of questions from all of you. Please keep sending them, because we enjoy reading them, and we will get the chance, if possible, to ask them to the audience. And I'll start with one question that we receive, and maybe I'll target this question to you, Tony. Your excitement is natural, and we can sense it. But will this dream ever come true? Is it possible to really reach those millions of hectares being restored? Is it possible to feed the world using Fmnr? And these past days, many of us have spent listening and joining sessions at the COP, and we're looking ahead. So would this dream be possible? Would it come to life?
We went to the moon. We created vaccines. We have the power to destroy the earth if we want to. Why don't we use that knowledge and skill and resources to restore the earth? And it's not as if you have to come up with some expensive, complex new invention. Nature is waiting for you to work with it. So yes, of course it's possible. It's a matter of the will. And I would repeat, it's a matter of mindset change. We have our focus on other things.
I don't know, if I can come in and just with my reaction I mean, this was truly a voyage of initiation for me, following Tony through Africa. And it works perfectly on the level of the villages, of the population, of the people. The one thing is mostly missing is there are ministries of agriculture, of forests, of lakes, of rivers, and so on, but you never see them in the field. And there are billions being spent in the last 50 years to save Africa, as if Africa had to be saved and couldn't do it on its own. But anyhow, as Tony said, you never see this money coming into the villages. So that is the other mindset that has to be changed. The system development aid, as it is mostly practiced, does not go, you know, to the grassroots, to the level where it belongs. And there is a huge change. Only Africa can operate themselves. I mean, to get a ministry out to look at Fmnr, you would have to pay him hundreds of dollars in expenses just to move out into the field. Now, I think there should be a revolution within Africa. I'm very passionate about that, because there you see the farmers, and then you come into the cities and you see, sorry for the word, fat cats, but it perfectly applies. And it just does not happen. The communication within the countries. And I see Tony, he's going directly to the villages. He's talking to the marabouts, to the patriarch, to the spiritual leaders, because they are the ones who are moving the country and producing change. Unfortunately, the governments don't.
Wow, Volker, I would have not said it better. We do need African governments and leadership to get closer to the ground and learn from their experience and invest even further into really growing this grassroots process. And I want to come back on what you've just said. The change is needed at the grassroots level. The change is made by the grassroots people at the local level. But then if we want to scale it up, we do need to ensure that there is some sort of connection between that grassroots level and a framework setting at the global or even national level. So what does that look like on the concrete side? Irene, can you help us unlock this potential? And I would also like to call on Mrs. Kerfel to tell us what are some of the vision that BMZ has into connecting these two angles. Irene?
Yeah, thank you. And I will just follow up from what Volker said. The voices of the communities must be heard, and their decisions must be included and considered at the table. So we all know the COP is going on, and I can assure you that probably less than 1% of the participants there are actual farmers who face the normal farming challenges and work on them to make a difference. So if their voices of the farmers will never be considered in the decision-making platforms, then we are still not headed in the right direction. Farmers are not subjects. Farmers have a voice, farmers have the experience, farmers have the expertise to address the global challenges. Their voice must be heard. Their skills must be put on board. They must be sufficiently equipped to fight the current challenges. They need the regalia. You know, when we have the military, when they go for war, they are given everything that ensures that they are safe to return. Why don't we think about farmers in that aspect? Because they're the frontliners. We must scale massive restoration movements that are actually adaptable and are able to be effective for farmers at the ground. Don't introduce approaches or technologies that are too technical for the farmers to adopt. We must also ensure that communities, and this includes men, women, children, the disadvantaged, the indigenous people, are included in all interventions, in all decisions, in all actions, in a way that ensures they thrive, their opportunities are actually invested in, their constraints are addressed. Indigenous knowledge is very fundamental. We have a challenge with experts. People think they know too much, and when simple technologies like Fmnr are brought on the table, you find people shy away from embracing these technologies. And I can tell you, when you go to government offices, sometimes you tell them, okay, we have this approach, it is simple, we can do it. They just push for tree planting. Why? Because maybe that is where money is. Why don't we look at what works and invest in it? The last thing I want to say is that the farmer's contribution must be fairly valued. We are now talking about carbon markets. We are talking about the opportunity for restoration and how farmers can benefit from carbon markets. But I can assure you that farmers on the ground do not even know what value carbon markets can bring in their lives. Their contribution must be fairly valued. And when it is valued, it means the work they do must have a fair return on investment. The carbon markets must work for the poor. It must work for the farmers. If it doesn't, it's only relevant for the big economies and the people who are playing at the top.
You've said it right. We do need to ensure very fair, and the carbon market must work. This is a movement we can't stop that would eventually come to Africa, that is already coming to Africa. But we do need to ensure that it works for farmers, and farmers are getting value to the extent of the work that they're putting into this effort. Thank you, Irene, for saying that. I'd love to also hear from Mrs. Carefell on the approach and vision that BMZ has in connecting the framework at the global/regional level with the grassroots level where works and change is needed.
Yes, thank you very much, Salima. So generally, BMZ is pursuing a multi-layer approach. Of course, we have an official partnership with our partner governments. We have government negotiations, and they take place in the capital, so not on the field. At the same time, we work very much locally. It's very important to partner up with the smallholders, with the via work with NGOs, via our field partners of the GIZ. So I think since years, but not since ever, we woke up and have this multi-layer approach. And just concretely, I think this project with Fmnr, we will bring that more strongly as well into the FAR 100 initiative. So to use this as a scaling up level to mutually learn. And yeah, no, I think I absolutely agree. And thank you for reminding what you see, let's say on the local level. And yeah, I take this message as well back again. It's always good to be reminded, but of course our approach is work with the grassroots. We spend a lot of means and funds for NGOs, and we as well support local NGOs, not only the European ones. So this is an evolvement over the past 10, 20 years, definitely. And this will lead the way forward, because we, as now is in the papers, we cannot plant trees and drive out people out of the forest. Yeah, we have to do that together, or not only plant trees, but to look at landscapes as a whole. So we pursue as well with GIZ landscape approaches. We do not talk so much about agriculture, ground and forests, but we approach that as a whole system. And of course, with the strong background of sustainable development goals, to look as SDG 1, fighting poverty, SDG 2, one world without hunger. So this is really like, these are our leading stars, and we think in an integrated way. And I hope we'll have a strong ministry in the future with the coming government to be able to pursue this very, very good track we are on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carefell. We do hope as well, because BMZ has definitely been such a supporter of this effort in Africa. And as Irene and everybody said, it's a journey and there's still learning to be made. And I want to go back on what you've said about the need of tailoring this in a landscape approach. Tony, there was a very interesting question that we received around, if you can speak a few words on the challenges of bringing back roaming livestock feeding on the regrowth of these of the trees. So how Fmnr being mostly done on farmlands, so how do you coexist with other land use practices and other realities that are mostly needed at the local level?
Great question. And the emphasis is on farmer managed or pastoralist managed. And so that makes it very, very easy. And the question becomes, well, what future do you want for yourself and your children? And how will you get there? And if you engage in that line of questioning, the only answer is we have to restore the land. And in order to do that, we need to change behavior, where we graze, when we graze, how we graze. But you see, that's they've internalized the problem. It's their problem, not my problem. It's their initiative, not me telling them what to do. And then it becomes relatively easy. I want a better life. This is what needs to be done. This is how I will do it. Now I've concertinaed right down but it's about empowering people. Give them the knowledge, enable them, empower them. They know perfectly well what to do.
I'm not being an agronomist. I would like to emphasize more what Tony is saying, because it took me a while to understand what is so important about trees. Well, it's not the tree per se. It is about, as he said, restoring the landscape, because the trees stabilize the soil to start with against wind. The trees create shade, so you can grow under it, because otherwise it is just too hot on the soil. No crop at all will grow there. So the tree is only the first step to be able then to do agriculture in the shade of the trees, and the tree being a biological pump, as Tony told me, brings humidity from deep in the ground to the surface, and then agriculture becomes possible. So that is really the relation. It is not that just that we, in a romantic way, dream about trees. Now, the trees are the necessity to be able to do agriculture under it. And the next thing is then what kind of crops to grow there. So as he says, it is the farmers who will do it, but it will take time, and that's where the money comes in. The communities have to be supported, as they are in Europe. The farming communities, that's the biggest jump of money in the European budget, is agriculture. And that is what it should be in Africa. The farmers have to get the means to slowly do this. A tree takes, even if Fmnr takes 10 or 20 years to really produce some shade and an effect on the ground. So the farmers right now need the money to survive, need the support to survive, to implement this. And the other thing is that it is not about large surfaces. It is small is beautiful. In Asia, it's proven after the agricultural revolution of the 60s and the 70s that the smallholders get the most out of the earth rather than the large surfaces. So when we talk about Africa can feed the world, what Tony means is really the Africans can feed the world. Meaning if there is, these 100 millions of farmers who work their ground in an intensive way on small parcels of land, then nature and the world will benefit from it. When I say not an oxen, but I mean a little tractor would help, but not a large tractor, and certainly not a bulldozer.
I am loving this image references. I think we should make a list of all the references you guys have made today. It would greatly make a meme. Volker, you've said something that really struck me about the need of raising that awareness. Today, as an expert of turning complex stories into convincing messaging, what is the role that communication and awareness raising has in this process? And I must confess, although I'm from Niger, where most of this effort had happened, I didn't know about Fmnr and the amazing potential it had until I came to the US and got the opportunity to meet Tony Ronaldo, Chris Rage, and Bob Winterbottom. So how is that possible? And what can we do? What is the efforts that we should invest more in terms of communication and awareness writing, movie making, to really raise the potential and increase the knowledge of our communities and the world in terms of this potential? What can be done?
Well, just what we are doing. Talk about it, show it, and don't give up on it. As Tony says, we don't need more expertise and analyses and theories to be developed. All the knowledge is there. All the thinking has been done. Now it has to be applied. And that is indeed as he says, work on the mindscapes. Europe and the world has a totally wrong image of Africa. It's only about catastrophe, famine, and so on. And I hate even that I included one image of a dying child in the thing, because that only confirms a prejudice. What I experienced in these over a period of 3 years, on and off, and from Senegal to Ethiopia and Mali and Niger, and we're not Ghana, where we've all been, is the incredible vitality of the population, their optimism, and their will to change things. They're just looking for the ways to do it. So there is a lot that can be done. And now the media are there in every village. You have at least one solar panel to charge the batteries of your phone, and on your phone you see what the world looks like. And this also. That Africa needs to change its own image of itself. It's between despair, blackmailing, we need more help, and on the other hand, the optimism, we can do it. Well, let's take family planning. It seems to be taboo in Africa. This is impossible. I mean, you simply go into the villages, and even Tony said, this explosion, it eats up all the progress that's being made. Besides, where will these children ever find work? If work at all, in their country or elsewhere. So this is, I think, a very, very important subject is family planning. And I do not understand why it is taboo. Maybe the politicians just think, well, the more people there are, the more people will vote for them. But ultimately, they'll cannibalize themselves.
No, thank you. Thank you for what you've said. We've had a lot of questions, and I would like to maybe take it to the ground. Now, I want to ask, is it possible to not succeed using Fmnr? It seems so simple, and we know it works. What are the risks that we need to keep in mind? What are the best practices that we need to keep in mind? And most importantly, someone asked, what are some of the baselines that you would recommend for someone, baseline studies that you will recommend for someone to conduct in order to determine if Fmnr is likely to succeed? So how do we prep ourselves to ensure that we put in place and implement the right techniques and the right mind shifts that is needed at the landscape level? And I'll feel free to answer, whoever feels empowered to answer to this question.
Let me start. And I start by following up on what Volker was talking about in terms of how we communicate and what we project in the public. So when we talk about regreening mindsets, the mindset business of this business of changing mindsets, it's a really underestimated component of projects. And when projects go into communities, they go to hit targets, So you move into a community, you need like 10 million trees grown within 3 years, and you're rushing to get them done whichever way. Then you report to the donor, it's done, dusted, move to the next thing. So I want to say that Fmnr, among other technologies, uniquely presents an introduction which allows communities to reflect on their past. So when they reflect on their past, they're able to connect with what mistakes they have done, and they're able to have a vision for the future they want to have. This is a very fundamental step in any project if you want it to succeed. Take time to understand these communities and allow them walk a journey by reflecting on where they have come from. What was the past like? What was our landscape like? What did we have? What have we lost? Where did we lose it? How did we lose it? And they will now contribute to what can we do to make a difference, which begins the journey of the transformation. Very fundamental. Number two, we sometimes do not really monitor change. So you just assume that things just happened. I know from Tony's work in Nigeria, it took so many years for the boom we now have today about Fmnr. What was happening in the 10 years when all these things were happening? Why was it that no one mentioned about it? Who began telling this story? How do we tell this story? And to who do we tell this story? Who is at the center of the story? Actually becomes a very important arm through which these approaches are able to make a difference in the people's lives. We need to move away from these lecture methods where you come, you make things very complicated, you want to train people, you sit in a hall, you do this and that. We must find a way to tell the stories of restoration in a way that captivates, in a way that touches our hearts, because when our hearts are touched, then our minds are transformed. There are challenges with Fmnr. One of them is the mindset. That's the beginning of the problem. So when people don't change their minds, they will not step up for action. We don't give up because people change for different reasons and over time. So when you move into a community and you still see people who are not receptive to the change, they may be your ambassadors in the next 5 years. Don't give up. Stay focused, maintain there, allow yourself to move with the few who agree, and let's start small. Agree to start small. It will make a difference. And the few people who begin the initiative for change will be the agents for the bigger transformation you want to see. So after mindset, there are policy constraints. So you move into a context where people do not have the right to benefit from the trees. So when I don't have the benefits from what I'm restoring, do I have an interest to restore? This was one of the impediments for action in Niger. And after the many efforts to push government to really make it simple for people to appreciate and benefit from restoration, then it became a breakthrough. So we have to ensure that we work on the policy issues and the issues like land tenure, tree user rights, tree user benefits. What does it mean to allow farmers benefit from restoration? We don't have trees as flowers. Trees are there to work for us. If they don't work for us, there's no business in us restoring. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you for your powerful message, Irene. Tony, I don't know if there's anything you would want to add.
I think Irene's covered it very well. I'd say the principles of Fmnr, and it's more than just pruning, it's actually a land restoration approach. So it's not just trees, it's how we manage soil, water, vegetation, and animals. So those principles, I've seen them working from even some hyper-arid areas right through to humid, and from alpine to lowlands. So the principles can be applied, but as Irene said, why? Why should I do this if I'm not going to benefit? And as Volker pointed out, for that livestock question, well, trees actually increase fodder. That's why for a pastoralist. But if there's no benefit, it's going to be very, very difficult to convince anyone to do it. In some instances where land holding size is very, very small, there's been more reluctance. And in some cases where the policies just don't work in favor of, people don't have ownership, they don't have user rights, you're pushing uphill there. And then the only other thing I would add is, what are the constraints? Do farmers have security over theft of those trees? If they do the work, will they actually see the trees, or will someone steal them? Over livestock, so somebody else might come in and mow them down, and over fire. And those might sound like difficult things, but they're not insurmountable. It's a journey. Sometimes it takes time, but they're not insurmountable.
Thank you. And we're receiving a lot of questions, and we're trying as much as possible to filter them. So please hang in there with us as we go through your questions. Today, we're talking about Fmnr because it's an established intervention for us. And for you, Tony, you've been implementing it for years now. But for those who don't know it and who are eager to start implementing it, where could they get trained? what are the resources available out there for them to get trained? And most importantly, I understand what communities can do because they are the farm owners, but what could regular individuals like ourselves do to support this movement as well?
Wonderful. So be informed, and there's a whole website dedicated to Fmnr, fmnrhub.com, and I'll put that in the text later. There's an online training course, which I'll send the link to GIZ, and they can put it on their website. If you are in a country where it's happening, for goodness sakes, go and visit. There's nothing better than just seeing it and learning from the people actually doing it. And as an individual, be informed, and then it depends on your station in life. If you're an NGO, learn about it, try to see if it's applicable where you are, and champion it. And if you're in perhaps a developed country, an urban setting, then within your sphere of influence, help others to learn about it as well. I don't know, Irene, if I've missed anything there.
So go on to fmnrhub.com, but there are also training courses that you can join. But go outside, go around in your city, in your towns, in the villages, go view. And I must say that this is how my life was changed when I visited a farm in Dansaga in Maradi, pruning my first tree under 45 degrees Celsius. And I was like, wow, this is when my motivation started for this effort. So thank you for that. There's also another question in terms of
maybe.
Oh, go ahead, Irene.
Sorry, I just thought about other sites where we can learn about Fmnr. There's so much on YouTube about Fmnr, telling the stories from communities. Go into YouTube and learn. There are many articles and research publications that have been done around Fmnr. If you are into research, go there and get to know what has been done, where are the challenges, do your studies. Yeah.
And then there is the Evergreening Alliance. Tony can tell you more about it. His wife is running it.
Well, it's a global alliance of non-government organizations and research institutes and environmental groups with the objective of restoring degraded landscapes worldwide and addressing climate change. But that also has a wonderful website.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Maybe one more question. So we understand Fmnr by its nature, as the word says, farmers manage natural resources management. We tend to think that this is mostly done on farmlands. Can Fmnr be done in other type of ecosystem? Is Fmnr encouraged in maybe tropical areas? I'm thinking of some of the last tropical forests we have in West Africa, in Ghana or Guinea, or even in the Congo Basin. Is also Fmnr encourageable on peatlands?
If it works on the edge of the Sahara Desert in Niger, it most definitely works in more humid areas. Nearly all plants, not every species, but nearly all plants have this capacity to resprout. So those principles apply. We in pastoralist areas, we call it pastoralist managed natural regeneration, and it's been used to great effect in northern Kenya. And it has a big impact. It lowers temperatures, it stabilizes soils, it provides fodder, gums, so many different things, honey. And then it's not exactly tropical, but in Ethiopia, we have a community managed forest restoration program. And they're benefiting in so many ways. They get carbon credits, fuel wood, poles, honey, fodder. And what surprised me, this is a restored mountain, and yet their agriculture improved. And I said, how does that work? And they said, Tony, even in a drought year, what few clouds come when they hit our mountain, they're more likely to drop their rain on us than on our neighbors. And in those very, very wet years when we used to get flooded out and lose our crops, the floods don't come anymore. So we're much more resilient, we're much more food secure. So the answer to that question, I've carried on. Yes, it has extremely wide application.
Thank you so much. Maybe one question as we are embarking on this COP26 and the focus is being made on climate and people. I know when it comes to Fmnr, and we've highlighted it, it's not about the tree. It's really about the impact it has on people, on the environment, on the vast arena of different stakeholders that surrounds and live out of these ecosystems. But what should we say to all the climate policymakers or climate decision makers? What is the connection between Fmnr and climate change?
So I think it was mentioned earlier, both mitigation. Sorry,
this is climate change calling.
Mitigation through sequestering carbon dioxide and helping people to adapt. And it has massive potential. By one estimate, there's at least 1 billion hectares of formerly forested land, and the World Resources Institute estimates there's at least 2 billion hectares of degraded forest land and agricultural land. Now, we're not going to turn that into a dense forest, but agroforestry and silvopastoralism will vastly increase the productivity of those lands while addressing climate change as well. And maybe there's something to add, Irene, but it's just a fundamental part of addressing climate change. It's not a free ticket to get out of jail. We still have to stop emissions, but by some estimates, nature-based solutions could provide 30% of the solution to climate change.
Yeah, I could also add that we need somewhere to bounce. We need to find a way to bounce back when we are hit by climate change. This is now adaptation. We need to find places where we can depend on when the situation is very, very tough. So Fmnr has provided a lot of opportunities for farmers to see their livestock into a drought season. In the past, they used to lose their livestock. So when we have, a better, a supply of fodder from the acacia trees, like the pods, when they increase the trees regenerated, we have more supply of fodder, we have more grass for a longer period of time. We have livelihood options that enable communities to sustain their lives within challenges that are linked to climate change. Food security. Tony has just talked about Ethiopia, it happened in Nigeria, it has happened even in our country, where places where we don't expect harvest, with Fmnr integrated within cropland, we at least have some yields that can take us through. So water cycle is also very important. We are hit by water stress because of the recharge potentials are getting very challenged by the day as we cut down trees. So when we implement Fmnr at large scale, we are able to ensure that we take care of our water cycle and we have a buffer zone. The microclimate condition is also very important, even for farmers to find a place to rest when the heat is so strong.
Thank you so much, Irene. Volker, I would like to maybe go to you. I hear you have announcements to make. And I also, about the movie, people have seen the trailer. They want to know how and when they can see the full movie.
I wish I knew. No, it's finished as of last week. We had a few preview screenings, and now I suppose that during this winter it will come on television in Germany and France through Arte. World Vision will see to distribute it in Australia and other places, because that's where it originated with Tony. And of course, I hope you'll all be able to see it on one platform, Netflix, Amazon, or other. in the near future, as it says. And again, on a screen in your neighborhood soon, if there are still screens. But of course, one would like to have it seen in Africa, and one would like to have it seen in Africa on the countryside. And that is another problem. It is indirectly related to Fmnr. Fmnr is so important to make agriculture possible again. But in order to have agriculture, you have to have the young people interested in agriculture and to stay in the villages instead of going out in the country, to the cities. But fact is that in sub-Saharan countries, only 30% have access to electricity, and up to 80% of the population lives in the countryside. And that was a very simple experience I had. We are not aware of this living in the Western world. Literally, Africans 12 hours a day live in the dark. The sun rises at 6 and it sets at 6, and after that it's dark. And if you do not have electricity, how can you study? How can you read? How can you inform yourself? You know, and so if the West wants to help really intelligently, the Marshall Plans should not be for heavy industry and creating jobs or things like that. It's simply, as Lenin said, electrify the countryside. Once you bring electricity everywhere, people will stay in the village. And if they stay in the village, then they will see how can they live off agriculture. So that is really, I think, a very important link, the same as GIZ has fountains in every village, I mean wells, but still the water comes up either with a hand pump or a donkey carrying. Well, water pipes should be, as in the rest of the world in Africa, go everywhere into every village. That is, I think, the development policies that should be applied. And because you have the people to stay in the countryside if you want to apply then agriculture and Fmnr. So this is all linked, and it is linked indeed to climate change, because if they do intensive agriculture in the countryside, well, it will create green surfaces that will benefit, and with the same with the water. I was astonished to see fountains spring out of a mountain that was bare before, and all of a sudden I did not understand that trees capture the rain indeed, because instead of washing down the mountain, it trickles down and it goes into the ground, and then down in the valley the water all of a sudden comes out in form of springs. So this is all integrated, but the living conditions in the country must be improved, I think, through water and electricity.
Thank you so much, Volker. I'm seeing that we're almost at time. I would like to maybe open one more question to the larger, to you all. What is, in your sense, your proposition to trigger that positive tipping point for systematic change across African landscape? And I want you all to think about it, because I want one short, concise answer from all of you. What is your proposition to trigger positive tipping points for systematic changes across our African landscape? I'll start with you, Tony, and then we'll end with our lovely and distinguished ladies.
Okay. Empower land users, train professionals, so the NGOs, the government staff, educate children, and listen to nature. 4 things.
4 things, and include women. 5.
Well, that goes without saying.
Volker, to you.
But, you know, I'm just an onlooker, but bring it down to empower women, because they are the ones who do the work on the countryside and in the farms, but it's the men who own the land And the woman, when she gets married or the man dies, she's a widow. She has no say on the land and all the work she put in. And this really has to change. And the next step from that is really family planning.
Thank you so much, Volker. Irene.
Okay, so one, be the source of change you want to see. In any space you have, any opportunity you have, it starts with me. I must be the source of change I want to see. Number two, I want to push that policies be implemented. It's not good enough that we have so many policies, but the implementation is wanting. Let policies be implemented and let them be pro-farmers in a way that ensures they're incentivized into action. Number three is let there be a fair return on investment for the poor. Let us appreciate the work that farmers are doing and let us respect farmers with the knowledge they have, with the skills they have, and in the challenges they live, they have what it takes to make the transformation happen.
Thank you so much, Irene. And Mrs. Kerfel.
Yeah, you can call me Lisa. Anyway, yeah, thank you. I absolutely agree and can underline the aspect of land rights and land user rights and the participation, very important point of work I didn't mention. And of course, good governance. Yeah, that you can really be able then to work on this land and not the next person would come and say it's all the work you've done is for nothing and we'll cut down these trees again. So we really have to make sure that this valuable work has been done. And I want to mention a very important report, interesting report of UNDP, FAO and UNEP, which is the multi-billion-dollar opportunity to repurpose agriculture support and subsidies. So really that we'll look at in the coming years how we can really transform the public spending on agriculture and concentrate more on fighting climate change. And this is something very much for the North. In Africa, we do not have so many subsidies, but they do exist. As well in Asia and Africa, and it's a very valuable work of these UN institutions to think about it. Say we have to spend money in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I completely agree. Let's get, as Volker said, let's get our leadership at the country level to invest more time on local grassroots efforts and redirect some of the fundings to where change actually matter. Well, let me just end by saying a big thank you to you all. I feel so special to have shared this session with you and learn and hear all about your amazing stories and passion. And I really hope all of you who had the chance to listen to this distinguished panel to really be as inspired as we are. But I also want to end by thanking all the team behind that made this possible. So a big thank you to the GIZ World Vision team that are out there supporting us. Thank you to C4 for this platform, and thank you to BMZ for being an ongoing support of this effort since day one. Most importantly, thank you to all four of you. It was really great talking to you, and there's a white paper on this particular topic. So if you want a concise 2-page to really deep dive on what is important, what to keep in mind, there's a white paper that is accessible and the link will be shared with you all. So thank you so much, and I will talk to you all very soon. And don't forget, go plant some trees or go grow some trees.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you. Goodbye.
Thank you again, Mrs. Kerfel. Bye-bye. Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.